I woke up from a car accident and realized I had lost my memory. My mom slapped me without any explanation. If I had known this, I wouldn't have brought you back. My dad cut off my allowance. You need to suffer a bit to learn. My boyfriend frowned, eyes full of blame. I ended up loving Molly because of you. But I vaguely remember my parents loving me. Officer, there's a group of human traffickers here. Come and catch them quickly. I had a car accident and lay in the ICU for half a month, almost becoming a vegetable. The nurse told me that surviving such a disaster means good fortune ahead. I blinked without saying anything. My throat felt so dry right after waking up. As I quietly drank some water, a group of people barged into the room. A well-dressed woman immediately slapped me, the crisp sound leaving my ears ringing. Can't you behave just a little? If you were half as sensible as Molly, you wouldn't have ended up like this. Who were you sneaking out with in the middle of the night? A stern-looking man furrowed his brows, his voice cold and unfiltered. There's a limit to being spoiled. You've embarrassed our whole family. I dazedly picked up the needle accidentally yanked out by the woman. Blood oozed from the puncture hole. I asked my first question since waking up. Who are you? The woman hesitated but then still spoke with a stern face. What game are you playing now? Are we not allowed to talk to you? Behind them, a frail girl wept inconsolably. Linda, even if you hate me, you can't deny Mom. For some reason, the sight of this girl made me instinctively uncomfortable. The nurse came in, saw my bloody hand, gasped in shock, and hurriedly helped treat my wound. Where are my parents? Who are they? I asked the nurse. The nurse paused, probably sensing the tense atmosphere in the room, and softly said, They are your parents. I shook my head firmly. Impossible. The couple seemed flustered and were about to speak when the girl started crying again, kneeling directly in front of me. Linda, if you resent me for taking your place, I can leave. You don't have to act like this. How sad it makes Mom and Dad. The couple immediately comforted the girl tenderly, a stark contrast to their earlier tone. You are Mom's precious daughter. What would I do without you? It wasn't your fault, you don't owe her anything. The three of them cried and consoled each other for a while before reluctantly speaking to me with a cold tone. Stop with your schemes. Molly will always be our daughter. Don't think you can drive her away. Since you're awake, pack up and come home. We won't hold this against you. I calmly looked at each of them before resolutely making a phone call. Officer, there's a group of human traffickers here. Please arrest them. Doctors and police confirmed that I indeed suffered from amnesia and that they were, in fact, my biological parents. I was the long-lost real daughter, while the crying girl, who made me uncomfortable, was Molly, the fake daughter who had enjoyed a lavish life in my place. At age 13, I was brought home. But because they were too attached to Molly, they continued to treat her as their daughter, refusing to see her sad. They told everyone they had 2 daughters. One had been lost but was found now. To them, Molly was gentle, graceful, and a true noble lady, someone they proudly spoke of. As for me, I was found feeding pigs in a pigsty. Crude and unpresentable. Selfish, greedy, cold, always bullying and plotting against Molly, despised by the whole family. Ultimately, I drove out late at night a month ago and crashed on a flyover. After being lectured by the police, my parents left the hospital in a hurry, saying, You brought this on yourself. They told me to stay put and that they'd pick me up upon discharge. I contemplated this farce and finally chuckled lightly. After recuperating in the hospital for another half-month, I was ready to be discharged. On the discharge day, only a driver came to pick me up. I asked, Where are my parents? The driver replied expressionlessly, They are attending Molly's birthday party. I raised an eyebrow. Molly's birthday was the same as mine, so her birthday party was also my birthday. Molly had her special party. And I had to go home alone with a driver. As soon as I stepped through the door, I was doused in disinfectant. Instinctively raising my hand to block it. The maid quipped sarcastically, Miss Linda, you just came back from the hospital. It's unlucky. What if you bring viruses and infect Molly? I smiled without a word, calmly wiping the disinfectant off my face. The maid, emboldened by my silence, straightened up and lectured me. You should change your rural habits, it's embarrassing. No wonder they don't like you. I beckoned her over. Come here, I need to tell you something. The maid hesitated but slowly leaned in. I swung and slapped her hard, knocking her to the floor. Covering her swollen face, she looked at me with terror and disbelief. How could you hit me? If I want to hit you, why wait for the right day? Also, you might want to gargle some disinfectant, seriously reek. Shaking my head in disgust, I left the stunned maid and carried my suitcase upstairs. Just as I reached the stairway, I bumped into someone. He was dressed in a black suit, his thin lips set in a flat line, his cold eyes slightly lifted, revealing no emotion. You're quite fierce. This should be my older brother, Jimmy. Unsure of his stance towards me, I hesitated briefly before truthfully explaining. She insulted me first. Jimmy sneered, looking down at me from the top of the stairs with undisguised contempt. I don't care what's wrong with your brain, if I find you bullying Molly again, you'll regret it. Sure, if you have the guts, just kill me. Shoved past him hard, he stumbled, looking displeased. Even though I have no memory, I'm not one to be wronged. Just a bunch of jerks coming up to me. Pushed open the door, I couldn't help but laugh out of anger. One word sums it up. They're all doomed. This huge villa, and my room is worse than the maid's quarters. An old blanket, a short desk, and a dim incandescent lamp. And the room I just passed by. So much sunlight, exquisite decor, and every little detail like the bed sheets, carpet, even a small handle, all showing the careful and pampered taste of the decorator. Compared to me, it's heaven and hell. Love and lack of it are so obvious. I threw my luggage aside and flopped onto the creaky bed. The bed probably hadn't been cleaned in ages, it had a musty, dusty smell. Whatever, I don't remember anything, so good or bad doesn't matter. Something poked my head. I pulled it out to see it was a diary. I got interested immediately. Isn't this the plot outline? At first, I wondered if they treated me so badly because I was awful before I lost my memory, but I was overthinking. When I was 13, after returning home, I went out of my way to please everyone. The beatings and humiliation from my foster parents for over 10 years made me feel out of place in this luxurious home. I didn't know to change shoes when entering, or wash hands before eating. I was like a mouse that crashed a cat's party. Every move I made screamed my crudeness. I even had an accent when I spoke. Compared to my well-spoken family, I felt like a bug from a mud pit. It made me more self-conscious and timid. Then, Molly reached out to me. She was beautiful and elegant, dressed in a lovely princess dress, smelling nice. When she smiled, dimples appeared on her cheeks. She said, "From now on, you're my sister," and I was overjoyed. I appreciated her so much. She helped me change shoes, taught me to use a fork and knife, shared her dolls with me. I thought, I must protect her, but dreams are just dreams. In a blink, she fell to the ground helping me change shoes, asking why I pushed her. At a banquet full of guests, she held her wrist, staring at the knife in my hand, eyes full of fear. Even the doll she gave me was shredded into pieces the next morning, laying in the trash can. She said, "Linda, I tried so hard, why do you still hate me?" Grief, confusion, subservience. Her pure eyes acted out these emotions so sincerely. From then on, the love of our parents and brother no longer belonged to me. I was just the outsider in the family. At 3 a.m., I closed the diary. Since no one loves me, I have nothing to worry about. Life, instead of wronging myself, might as well go crazy and have some fun. The next morning, Molly warmly dragged me to the dining table. The whole family was there. "You're finally awake. This is your birthday cake, finish it so we can go to school together." I glanced sideways. That so-called saved birthday cake was mashed with cream, and even had a handprint on the edge. 2 daughters with the same birthday, one had a party, the other got leftover cake. I clasped my hands to my cheeks and exaggeratedly exclaimed, "So it was your birthday yesterday. I was too busy leaving the hospital and didn't have time to wish you happy birthday. This cake was saved for me." "Thank you, this handprint design is so unique, I've never seen it before." Parents and Molly looked awkward. This cake was indeed leftovers. Just like when they went out to eat, they'd bring leftovers for me. In the past, I just silently accept it with a smile. But now, I exposed it right then and there. "Mrs. Smith cleared her throat, a bit embarrassed. "Linda, Molly's birthday party was planned half a month ago. We had lots of guests to entertain, so we couldn't pick you up in time. Too busy to pick me up, but since last night, none of you asked about me." I looked innocent. "Mom, don't say that, Molly's birthday is more important. I was just discharged." "Mom, when is my birthday? I forgot a lot after waking up." Mrs. Smith paused at my mom, guilt deepening in her eyes. Her lips moved but no words came out. Mr. Smith frowned. "It's just a birthday, we can make up for it later. Why fuss over it?" Molly looked at me, hurt. "I'm sorry, there were too many people at my party, so Mom and Dad couldn't pick you up." Her eyes briefly showed pride, flaunting her attention. But to me, it was just like toilet leftovers for a dog. I patted her hand hard. "I appreciate Dad's kindness. Birthdays are a mother's suffering day. It was tough for Mom to give birth to me. I shouldn't celebrate. I won't anymore." Mrs. Smith stared at me for a while, eyes watering. She probably remembered who was her real daughter, born through months of pregnancy and near-death experience. Mrs. Smith threw the cake into the trash, came over, and caressed my face. "I'll get you a cake you like." "Mom is the best." I hugged Mrs. Smith, faked a sweet voice. "Mom, what flavor of cake did I like before?" Mrs. Smith stiffened, her hold loosening. She didn't know. Molly stood there, looking at me like she wanted to tear me apart. Now she was the outsider. Jimmy wouldn't let his precious sister be overlooked. He reminded his parents. "Molly, I'll take you to school." "Great." Mr. and Mrs. Smith turned, seeing Molly forcing a smile but tears in her eyes. They immediately let me go and comforted her. They loved that girl they raised from childhood more than temporarily loving me. Molly and I were in the same class. Everyone in the class looked down on me, whispering that such a kind girl as Molly couldn't possibly have such a wicked sister. Some said I was a foster daughter and not related by blood. So then a group of people started calling me ungrateful, like in the fable The Farmer and the Snake. I kicked over the desk in front of me. With a crash, everyone went silent and stared at me wide-eyed. Sorry, I have a reaction to dogs. Lost control of my emotions. Molly's entourage caught on and shouted, "What do you mean? Are you calling us dogs?" I blinked. I didn't mean anything, but if you insist on interpreting it that way, then your meaning is my meaning. This series of moves successfully confused her. She fumed and mumbled, "I'm not arguing with someone as uncultured as you." I said, "Got it, you want to argue with my parents? No problem, I'll call them to school right now." She panicked. Even if my family didn't like me, they wouldn't let outsiders bully me openly. That's not what I meant. "Don't call," she shouted, nearly in tears. I held my phone, looking innocent. "So why not now? No need to worry about my phone bill." At this moment, Molly walked over, her voice soft. "That's not what she meant. She just speaks bluntly, don't overthink it." Her meaning was that the other girl was straightforward and I was scheming, intentionally misinterpreting. The follower immediately looked at Molly with gratitude. Molly smiled comfortingly. Then she turned to me and said, "If you have any problems in class, you can come to me. Don't start conflicts over small things." I smiled. "I actually need your help with something." "With what?" "Get off the planet," Molly cried, tears streaming down her face as a group of people surrounded her, trying to comfort her. I ignored it and found a seat. I didn't know why everyone was comforting her. If she cried herself blind, it would only make me happier. After the break, I went to the bathroom. As I pushed open a stall door, a group of girls were standing there with their arms crossed. I lazily leaned against the door. This is all Molly's got. I chuckled. In such a rush to start trouble. They looked confused for a second but quickly pushed me and cursed, "You bitch, don't think losing your memory makes you special. You bullied Molly and still have the nerve to live in her house. Shameless. A slut like you should have been played with by men countless times in the mountains, and you still have the guts to compete with Molly. Shame on you, seeing you makes me sick." I nodded seriously, then suddenly asked, "So why are you so eager to eat?" The girls were instantly furious, rushing toward me to tear me apart. I grabbed a mop nearby, stabbed it into an unflushed toilet, and swung it across, hitting the lead girl in the face. She screamed as the foul smell and slimy texture drove her mad. The others quickly grabbed brooms and shovels, with one even picking up an iron rod to hit me. I wielded the mop smeared with excrement, poking one and hitting another, sharing the misery equally. Screams followed one after another as onlookers, horrified by the scene, covered their noses and ran away. The girls collapsed on the ground, pale and gagging. Someone started vomiting, splashing it on others, causing them to puke too. Eventually, everyone was retching, lying in a pool of vomit and fainting. I stood at the door, laughing hysterically, holding my nose. Though it was disgusting, it was effective. Suddenly, a boy grabbed my wrist firmly. "Linda, you went too far. What grudge do they have with you to deserve this?" It was Charles, my ex-boyfriend, now probably Molly's boyfriend. I sneered. "Are they your mom? Why are you so anxious?" Charles was stunned, clearly not expecting this from me, who used to grovel for his attention. "I know you're mad at me and Molly, but if you hadn't hurt Molly so much, I wouldn't have broken up with you. You're the one at fault. You shouldn't blame others." What twisted logic. So, being betrayed and seeing my boyfriend kiss my sister was my fault? I should blame myself for being small-minded and immature? I laughed. "Do you know what my online name is?" Charles frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Apologize to them and Molly right now, or I won't forgive you." I smirked. "Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Shit Your Mouth. Goodbye, scum." With that, I jabbed the mop in his face. Bullseye. That evening, I went home to a brightly lit house. They were waiting for me. I didn't bother pretending anymore and waved. "Good evening, everyone. Mr. Smith threw a teacup at me, hitting my forehead. Blood gushed out instantly. "You jerk. It's bad enough you bully Molly at home. Why do you have to bully those kids at school?" Mrs. Smith sternly said, "How can someone so young have such a wicked heart?" Molly chimed in, "Linda, you went too far this time. They think you said something harsh to me, so they wanted to talk. They're all girls, how could you?" Mr. Smith's eyes widened with rage. "You lost your memory and still bully Molly. How could our family have someone like you?" Mrs. Smith looked at me doubtfully. "Are you really amnesiac, or are you just faking?" Jimmy said coldly, "I always said we should send her abroad, she's only trouble here." When I fought back, I knew it would escalate to this. I didn't expect they wouldn't even ask why I fought, blaming everything on me. "Do you even know why I fought them? Your terrible personality." Mr. Smith shouted angrily. "If I had known, we would have never taken you in, Mrs. Smith sighed in disappointment. "Fine," I chuckled. "Give me $2 million, and I'll cut ties with you right now." They were taken aback. Jimmy looked at me disdainfully. "Another one of your tricks. Do you think you can threaten anyone? I think you've had it too easy for too long. Starting today, I'll stop giving you a single penny. Let's see how tough you really are." I glanced at Mr. Smith. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely. Fine by me." If you really want to cut ties with me, just remember to give me the 20 million. Ignoring the screams behind me, I walked into the night. My wounds still hurt a bit. Honestly, I didn't care if Mr. Smith gave me the money or not. After all, before I lost my memory, he used to give Molly $500,000 a month for pocket money, not including trusts and funds and me. I didn't even have a card specifically for pocket money like Molly. Sometimes I'd get pocket money, sometimes I wouldn't. And when I did, it came with warnings. Don't always expect handouts. Money doesn't grow on trees. Don't think about what's not yours. Yet Molly could spend tens of thousands on a single hair clip, while I couldn't even afford an ice cream. My classmates taunted me. All because, that one day after gym class, there was no water in the classroom. I was so thirsty my throat was on fire. And the guy in front opened a bottle of soda, and the fizzy sound grabbed all my attention. It wasn't until everyone burst out laughing that I realized I had been staring for a long time. I shrugged and whistled nonchalantly. No big deal if you won't share. With my current injuries, I could probably wring a bit more money out of them. When Mr. Smith and Jimmy found me, I was performing on the street with my sad melodies, bandaged head, and shivering from the cold. I cut such a pitiful figure that a strong man might shed tears. What kind of tragic life would force a high schooler to busk on the street? The crowd was heartbroken by my plight. Parents with kids even loudly cursed my parents. Then, two well-dressed men pushed through the crowd and yanked me up. Linda, why aren't you at school? What are you doing here? Mr. Smith trembled with anger, while Jimmy looked like he'd swallowed something foul. A video of me busking had gone viral online. The scandal blew up, hitting multiple trending topics. First, a teacher from school saw it and called Mr. Smith. Then, Jimmy's assistant accidentally displayed it on the big screen during a meeting. Everyone knew then. The long-lost daughter of the Smith family, kicked out of her home, reduced to busking on the streets. And this girl? She had a car accident, just got out of the hospital a few days ago. Rumor has it she's got some brain issues, lost her memory. Kicking her out knowing she has amnesia? That's cruel. Don't you know? Linda was switched at birth, found later. Naturally, they don't have the same bond. And the other daughter? She's in our school too. Plus, she stole Linda's boyfriend. No way. Stealing her identity and her boyfriend? The online comments got crazier, though some did trash me too. No way her whole family hates her. She must have done something bad. Yeah, like bullying classmates, shoving poop-covered mops in their mouths. Would you keep her at home? And her car accident? She was meeting some guy at 3 a.m. But the posts defending me overpowered the criticism. Everyone knew the Smith family's drama wasn't a secret, readily verifiable. Plus, with the specific details I shared and the Smiths' rivals adding fuel, this fire was hot enough to skin them both. Overnight, the company stock plummeted. Board members proposed the father and son step down. Mr. Smith, enduring people's whispers, forced me into a car and dragged me home. Molly sobbed uncontrollably in Mrs. Smith's arms. Even Charles was there, looking at Molly with heartbreak. I swaggered to the table, sat down, and leisurely peeled a shrimp. Mr. Smith stood with hands on his hips, chest heaving. Make a video, now. Say you bullied your classmates, and that's why you left home after being disciplined by us. Mrs. Smith added urgently, and clear up the Molly thing. Tell them Molly didn't steal your boyfriend. Charles always liked Molly. I burst out laughing. Listen to yourselves. Is this how parents talk? Twisting the truth to blame me? Trying to get something for nothing? If you want me to take the fall, at least pay up. Otherwise, you're freeloading. Mr. and Mrs. Smith's faces paled, realizing how unfair they were. I said 20 million. I'll be gone. A good deal. Jimmy's face turned dark. You see us as a transaction. Yeah, you heard right. To you, I'm not family anyway. I smiled as I took out my phone. Shall we transfer the money? Mr. Smith exploded, shouting, we fed you, clothed you, and you're still not satisfied? Do you know how much damage you caused the company? Mrs. Smith's eyes reddened with disbelief. What on earth are you so bitter about? We've brought you back, compensated you. Isn't that enough? I suddenly stood up, flipped the dining table, and food scattered everywhere. Why can't I be bitter? Why can't I hate? I've had enough. I screamed, venting my rage. I tore off my jacket, revealing my tank top covered in scars. Round, square, linear, burns, belt marks, stones, needles. Too many to count. The horrific sight made Mrs. Smith scream. Scary, huh? But for over 10 years, I've lived with this every day. The day you came to pick me up, I was over the moon. I thought my suffering was over. But what did you do? You instinctively stepped back, covering your noses, faces full of disgust, because I was feeding the pigs. I stared at their unwilling expressions and slowly rolled up my pant leg, exposing my calf. My calf was dark brown, with skin and flesh like shriveled old book covers, rough and uneven. When I was 8, a pig bit me, taking a chunk of flesh. Can you believe it? Pigs not only bite but also eat people. Yet, I've been feeding them for over 10 years. Mr. Smith and Mrs. Smith's lips trembled, staring at my scars for what felt like forever. They had never seen these scars, never imagined I had endured such horrific torment. But after bringing you back, we've been trying to make it up to you, Jimmy said hoarsely, still thinking I was being unreasonable, thinking I was wrong. Your way of making it up to me includes obvious favoritism towards Molly or treating me like a thief. No, no. Mrs. Smith cried, you are our biological daughter, you don't need to be afraid of anything. But Molly, she knows she's not our biological daughter, she's scared, we're just a bit more attentive to her. A bit more attentive? You're really good at finding excuses, Mrs. Smith. When I was 13 and just came back, I had a high fever. I told you I was sick, and you told me not to play tricks, then turned to comfort Molly who had a nightmare. Mr. Smith, when I was 14, Molly lost your car keys. You comforted her and said you'd buy another. I lost one of your old pens, and you punished me by making me kneel for a whole day. Jimmy, on the very first day I came in, you warned me not to think about taking anything from Molly. That everything in this house belonged to her. Your idea of making it up to me is really beyond my reach. They stood there stunned, unable to respond. It was as if their hypocritical masks had been ripped off. They searched their memories anxiously, hoping to find anything to contradict my accusations. Unfortunately, they couldn't find a single instance. Molly got anxious, seeing the regretful expressions on their faces. She started pointing fingers. Mom and Dad were biased because you bullied me repeatedly. Even if we were switched at birth, I'm innocent. I was just a kid back then, what could I do? You wouldn't have had anything to do with it if you stayed quiet. I pulled out my phone and played a surveillance video. It unmistakably showed Molly calling to lure me out, then having someone cut my brake lines, resulting in my car accident. They were stunned, unable to believe that the cold-hearted person in the video, talking about killing me, was their once sweet and lovely daughter, Molly. Molly panicked, you're lying. The video is fake. I never called you. You're setting me up. Tell that to the police. Molly turned pale and clung to Mrs. Smith's leg, crying, Mom, I was just scared, she kept targeting me, I had no choice. I laughed. I stepped forward, grabbed her by the collar, and dragged her towards the bathroom. She screamed in panic but struggled futilely, kicking her legs frantically. I shoved her head into the toilet. What a pity, who cleaned the toilet so thoroughly? Molly screamed shrilly, swallowing toilet water. Mrs. Smith looked between her and me, tears streaming down her face. She still couldn't bear to see Molly like that. She pleaded. Molly was just momentarily confused. This is a family matter, let's not involve the police. Mr. Smith, silent for a long time, spoke in a tone of negotiation. You're fine now, right? Molly was wrong here. She can apologize, but we can't call the police. I didn't die, so there's no need to hold Molly accountable. Even at this point, they were still protecting her. By the way, I forgot to mention, you two are going to be grandparents. I tossed them a pregnancy test report with Molly's name on it. Close family indeed, because the child's father is your Jimmy. Their pupils dilated, mouths opened wide, as if someone had grabbed them by the throat, unable to utter a single word. Mrs. Smith ran over and slapped Molly hard. You shameless thing. He's your brother. How could you do such a thing? She cared more about Molly compared to me, but if it involved her beloved son, even 10 Mollys wouldn't matter. Molly, holding her cheek, cried out, I'm also your daughter. Why don't you ask brother why he did this to me? Jimmy. Help me, it's all Linda's fault. I'm carrying your child, I can't go to jail. Jimmy stood frozen, unable to react. After a long pause, he said hoarsely, that night, I was drunk. Molly's hand, clutching his shirt, froze. She turned mechanically, scanning everyone, and suddenly laughed crazily, her eyes bloodshot. Fake. It's all fake. You don't love me at all. You only liked me because I was obedient, because I was presentable, that's why you cast aside Linda. Yes. I framed Linda, from the beginning till now. I wished she was dead. Dead, so no one could compete with me. She collapsed on the floor, shaking, hugging Mrs. Smith's knees, crying, Mom, I just wanted your love, Mr. Smith clutched his chest, suddenly rolled his eyes, and fell to the ground. The family hurried to help him, but I walked away without looking back. Linda, Mrs. Smith called out, as though to keep me, as though with regret. Your Linda has long since died. I didn't lie to them. The real Linda died that cold night. I'm just someone who came into her life. Mr. Smith's teacup triggered all my memories. I calmly watched the farce unfold, watched them turn on each other, watched their regret and grief. My heart was as still as water. I only felt sorry for the Linda who had to always tread cautiously. For the Linda who scrubbed until her skin broke just to rid herself of the lingering stench of pigs after nearly 20 years. For the Linda who watched her parents hold the girl who took her place for 10 years, telling her to get lost in that cold voice. For the Linda who woke early to cook in hopes of pleasing her family, only to find no one touched the food. For the Linda who fell in love with the guy her mother approved of, only to find him secretly kissing her sister, and being labeled as malicious. For the Linda who tried so hard to live her life, only to quietly lose it in the end. Molly just turned 18 and ended up in jail. Mr. Smith had a stroke, leaving him paralyzed on one side, stuck in bed for all his daily needs. Amid his mumblings, he only called out for Linda. Mrs. Smith cried all day long, always holding on to the clothes I left behind, mumbling apologies. How could I do this to my Linda? Jimmy transferred all his assets to me. On the day he signed the papers, he asked, that night, it was you who stayed with me? I just smiled and didn't answer him. When Jimmy was a kid, he was accidentally locked in the basement by his classmates for an entire day and night. Since then, he developed severe claustrophobia and a fear of the dark. He couldn't sleep without the lights on that night. There was a heavy storm, and the power went out. Linda knew he was afraid of the dark, so she hurried to his room with her phone light. He was curled up at the corner of the bed, trembling, his back drenched with sweat. Linda went over and called him, but he hugged her tightly, and the phone fell somewhere, turning off the light. That night, Linda kept patting his back, softly comforting him. Not until he fell asleep did Linda leave. Half asleep, he said, thank you. Linda felt so happy. She thought they got closer. But the next day, he was holding Molly, buying her lots of pretty clothes, saying it was Molly who cared for him and stayed with him all night. Linda stood there, stunned. Wasn't it her who was with him? How did it turn into Molly? Linda chased after them, eagerly telling him it was her who stayed last night. But he just glanced at Linda with disgust and held Molly even tighter. If it was you, that's freaking gross. Linda realized from that moment on, she no longer had a brother. Jimmy lowered his head in defeat. Before going to jail, Molly accused him of statutory rape. Based on the timing of her pregnancy, it indeed happened a few months before she turned 18. He couldn't escape that. As for Charles, I can't be bothered. This shameless man kneeled in front of me, crying that Molly seduced him, begging me to give him another chance. I was beyond words. Only a blind Linda would fall for this kind of trash. I beat him up real good at the school gate, grabbing him by the collar. Remember my name? Shit your mouth? No, it's Big Shark. Did they really regret it? I don't know. But the little fish finally swam in the big ocean, no longer trapped in those 4 small walls. Many people would love her. And the shark should head back to its home too.